by placing our feet on the earth and closing our eyes. I know it's a funny way to begin a storytelling class, but as storytellers, we're the seers of the world. And so for this moment, I'm going to invite you to turn off the sight in which you look at the world and turn it inward. And so I really invite you to give yourself the gift of this full hour, because I'm going to invite you on a journey to really explore your inward journey and where you are on your journey as a storyteller. And we're all storytellers, whether we consider ourselves to be or not. It's part of our human birthright. And so I invite you in this moment to create a mudra where you take your thumb and your forefinger and press them together and place them on your lap. And this calls forth the wisdom in you. So allow yourself to come into connection this way, in connection with your wisdom. And now finding your breath, finding your body and what position it's in, just noticing, not making it right or wrong, just noticing, where is your body in space? Are you leaning forward, leaning into the world? Are you slunched down? Are you back? Before you change anything, I'm just going to invite you to really come into this deep place of noticing. What is your body telling you about how you're using this sacred vessel, this vehicle for story? And as you do that, I invite you to now come into that state of alignment. Now come into that place where you notice, okay, imagine that there's a piece of thread at the very top of your head, and just allow it to lift you up. So now your core muscles are engaging. What does that feel like? Rolling your shoulders back, which opens your heart. Some of you might be like, whoa, that's way too much. So you're going to do what feels right in your body, giving you a chance to be like, what does it feel like? And now, this is the most important thing we're probably going to do in this part of our time together. Taking your ear, rolling it down to your shoulder, and really rolling your neck around. Again, you're like, what? I'm in a storytelling class. Why am I doing stretches? Because this neck, this is the connection between your heart and your head. And if it's not fluid, if it can't move, if it's not engaged, is that third chakra, is that ability to speak free. So I invite you to switch sides and give it another roll, just noticing how it feels. And now just taking a nice deep breath and just feeling yourself in this space. Feeling the bottoms of your feet, sensing the air across your skin. Noticing if you can smell anything. What sounds do you hear? This is probably one of the most important tools that storytellers engage, which is their radical presence, to be alive with the moment. And while here, I'm going to bring you a quote. And this quote is from Mahatma Gandhi. It goes like this. Mahatma Gandhi taught us to remember our thoughts generate words. Our words generate actions. Our actions generate habits. Our habits generate character. And our character breeds destiny. I'm going to read that again because it's like, wow, it's so thick. I'm going to invite you to kind of consider where you are in all this. Our thoughts generate words. Our words generate actions. Our actions generate habits. Our habits generate character. And our character breeds destiny. And so that's the kind of conversation that we're going to enter into today. So welcome, 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 everyone. And if you want to, my favorite thing is now that your eyes are all open, if you want to place yourself on gallery view and just take a look around the room, who are you on this adventure with today? You know, and one of my favorite things to do is to come into that moment of What lens am I looking through? What lens am I looking through today? Can you, it's like, this is the wild thing of Zoom, right? It used to be we would all walk into a room and there'd be some, the sign comes some sense of anonymity, being anonymous, where like no one could see the space that we lived in, the space of our creation. And now we look into people's homes. And with that comes this capacity to create all these kinds of like, what stories are you immediately creating about people as you look into their world? And in this moment, don't make yourself right or wrong. Just be in the joy and the pleasure of noticing, oh, well, she looks smart, you know, or he's got it together, or, well, that's funny, you know, or like, what are the things? What are the things that you're just saying? And can you be so astute as just to notice without making it right or wrong? What are the stories that you're immediately making without even thinking about it about people? Okay. Because stories, I like to start this way because stories are actually co-created. And I will be looking at you all day long as we, not all day long, for the next hour as we co-create today. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Leah Lamb, and I grew up on a farm in Vermont. Actually, I grew up moving between a farm in Vermont and New York City and Richmond, Virginia. But that farm in the Vermont really cultivated my relationship with the land. But more than anything, it gave me the key to probably my existence as a storyteller, and it taught me about listening because I had all of this time to be alone in nature, in the wilderness, and it really taught me how to listen and how to cultivate a relationship with the natural world. I was very, very lucky where my gifts were seen and cultivated when I was a young kid. And so I was put into classes with a bunch of masters in acting in the world of theater and production. I was invited into a professional theater company when I was in high school. And the first play I ever wrote and submitted was actually accepted into a playwriting festival, and I got to see it on stage. And so I went straight into the world of theater. My parents actually, I was trying to go to NYU for New York City, NYU for acting. My parents sat me down and they said, please don't waste your time and our money if what you want to do is acting. Go find yourself a great acting school, but don't go to college for that. And so I didn't. I got into one of the best acting schools in New York City. I got to study with Sandy Meisner at the Neighborhood Playhouse. And I went on to Williamstown Theater Festival, and I got to work off Broadway. And I really learned the business of storytelling in theater. I also realized that not only was it not for me, that kind of business, but it wasn't enough. It didn't integrate the wholeness of what I was. And I really had this love for social justice and for what I would now call environmental protection. And I wanted to figure out how to weave these different paths together. And that journey led me to getting a master's in social work, to working as a community organizer, to working as a crisis worker. I worked on race relations and conflict resolution as a facilitator. And at the same time, in my summers, I was working as a wilderness guide. And I was working with youth at risk in Montana and Alaska and Idaho and Minnesota. And again, just like integrating and grounding in that absolute love and passion for intimate relationship with the natural world. And yet there was this thing in me where I was like, there was this angst. Maybe you know a little bit about this and you felt this angst too, where like all of what I was not being woven into one path. It was being desperate, you know. And in that angst, I got to do some more really cool things. You know, I worked with Al Gore and I produced the Green Channel for him at his television network. I started my own nonprofit called the Performance Initiative, which was all about utilizing the arts for social change. And we took on really big projects. And in me, I was cultivating this really big question. You know, I had this experience in theater, and I saw that there was this like magic that happened in the room. It was palpable. There was an energy that was created. And I wanted to figure out how to harness that energy and use it for social good. You know, so I came close to, and I knew that I wanted to do storytelling, but I couldn't quite figure, like my path wasn't quite, I was like getting so close to the storytellers. And so what I would do is I would take my passion and I would bring it to the storytellers. And I ended up being at the Bay Area when they just started inventing this new kind of pathway of integration of creating documentaries that had a real, excuse me, what's the word? You know, they had a message that they wanted to take home. They wanted an action that they were driving their audience towards. And so I would support them by creating this social impact campaign. So there I was, as close as I could to like working with story as a tool to engage people and to mobilize and to motivate. At the same time, I was going crazy because like I was close to what I was and I was close to bringing all the pieces together, but it like wasn't happening. And like there was something like I felt like there was something living in my rib cage that was like shaking at the prison that it was living in, being like, I like there's something else or some other way where my genius, like that true genius, can be expressed. And I prayed. Like I went in for a really, really big prayer and I heard something that I didn't like. So then that's when I know it's guidance, right? It's not just your ego like stroking you. And I heard that like I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing. I need to sit down and listen. And it told me to listen for 10 days. And my whole world was based on this external stimulus of being successful and getting credentials and doing all this. And so this idea of stopping the show and listening was my idea of torture. And I did it. I did it for 10 days. And on the ninth day, I just about lost my kittens because nothing was happening. And that's when I was walking through the woods and I heard these whales singing. And I thought, who could I be to hear whales singing? Wouldn't that be a pretty poem? And little did I know that when I went down to my computer, I wrote through the night into the morning and the first 14 chapters of what would become a 5-book series. That was the exact essence of, of how the genius is living through me. And I don't, when I use this term, how the genius is living through me, it's not an egotistical, oh, wow, I'm so great. That's not it. It's like genius as the spirit of life. You know, we all have the genius that wants to live through us, you know, but we don't all have an environment that asks for that genius to be engaged and activated. So I want to ask you right now, where and who in your life is calling out your greatness? You know, there are those people that are going to call out our greatness. And I had that moment where that story came forward and I started to understand, and this is a longer story, but what came forward in that also was my gift as a mystic storyteller. And I started to give these short little mystic soul story readings to people. And I was so lucky that I was in a community where people saw the genius that was living through me. And they said, more of that. What is that? More of that. And I didn't know. But I think back to how my life has come into being. And there's not one moment that I don't bow in humble gratitude to those people in my life who called for more, who saw my gift and called it out. And so if there's anything that I can invite you into is really look around the room of your community, of your friends, and really identify who are those people who are calling out your greatness, you know, or who are those people that are really close in but might not know how, and they just niggle at that part of you that's not so great. They call out your shadow self and they call out that you know what it feels like, that you know. Now you can call those people bad people. Oh yeah. Mel has one of those. You know, so it's like, so you can call those people bad people, or you can be like, oh my gosh, what gift are you giving me? That's what they do when they call out your shadow. You're like, what gift are you giving me? This is right there and then I'm going into this idea of how do you frame the story of your life, you know, and one is being the director, and being the director and saying, who do I support myself with, and who's calling out my greatness, who's calling for my genius, who's supporting it, so that I can come and live the biggest life. And I'm not talking about a big life building skyscrapers or being on stage. I'm talking a big life meaning like you've got the life force running through you. You've got the things that matter, love and connection, good food, community. You know, it's like whatever the things that really matter to you. So as I talk about that, I just want to really land that. So the other thing I'll just say is that I'm a Capricorn. I'm addicted to learning. I've spent my life learning from as many master teachers as I can, and I absolutely love sharing what I learn. It just brings me so much pleasure and joy. So as I began to come alive and really understanding what is this lost art of sacred storytelling, it wasn't enough for me just to do it myself. I could see what was happening when I was coming into rooms and I was doing what I now call sacred story ceremonies that really brought people together to work with a big story and to harness that energy and to direct it into places where we could really get into the healing and transformational nature and the gift that the story itself has to offer us. So as I came into that, I realized it wasn't enough just to do it. I actually really wanted to be a part of empowering, and I'm so wary of that word, but just giving other people the skills and techniques so that they could do it as well. Because I really believe that we don't need to save the planet, but I feel like there's a lot of healing that wants to be done. And the more of us that have the skills to bring that healing, and what is storytelling? It's that most ancient art that we have for human connection. The more of us that come back to this ancient art, I really do believe that it is one of the keys that brings us back into balance with the natural world. So let's talk about just some of the most key pieces that give us the keys to understanding humans' unique role on the planet. So right now, I'm going to flip that story that's so big in our narrative right now, especially the climate narrative, right? People are bad for the planet. Let's just take that story, throw it out the window, and get to some of the most ancient wisdom that's available to us, which is that when we look back to the old cultures, the ancient cultures, they all give us hints to understanding our unique role on the planet as humans. Hawaiians say that words are so powerful that they can speed up the world or slow it down. Sicilians say that words poke holes in the universe. I always think about that. You can't ever take anything back once it's been spoken. You can repair, but you can't take it back. The Maoris say that words don't describe a thing, they are the thing. Australians say that the stories of our past must be spoken to our present in order for the future to exist. The Japanese have a word called kotodama. It speaks to the spirit of a word, that there's a soul and there's a life form in the thought before it's even spoken. And all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. I want to say that again, because again, it's just one of those things that you're like, whoa, that all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. So this really gives us this key to understanding ourselves, that we are creators. We are creators of this world, and we are on a creator planet. And as humans, we have this extraordinary capacity to alchemize and transform all of these different creations that our planet is making into other forms. How we use that special power is yet to be determined, right? But let us take the story that humans are bad for the planet and throw it out the door and cancel it because it's a lie. Because we have other stories that really remind us of the power and potency and the unique gifts that we have to give to this world. So let's go into this idea, and I'm going to be asking for your perspective now, your version. And you can raise your hand to speak, or you can place it in the chat box. Janelle saying, can I repeat the Hawaiian one? It says, Hawaiians say that words are so powerful that they can set the world into motion or slow it down. And so if you have a chance to go on YouTube and look up hula and get to see this ancient practice. You know, a lot of us think of hula and we've seen it as sort of this, as something that's been stolen and used as entertainment for tourists. Hula is an ancient practice. It's a prayer. It's an embodied prayer that engages language. You know, and so to get to see a culture and a people who have not lost their relationship, you know, not to say that hasn't been easy, but there is definitely many movements from this place where people are committed to remembering and reenacting and living in this way. And so go see it, because there's not a lot of us that can witness this kind of engagement. So what's a story? What is a story? Hi, Franklin. It's kind of fun to see familiar names. Carrie, what is a story? This is where I truly ask. I'm asking for your feeding of our conversation. If you're on the second and third page, I might not see you, so hold on. Okay. What is a story? Yes, Melissa.
Oh, sharing of experience.
Right. The sharing of experience. So, and I would say it's a sharing of experience with a purpose. You know, I have a dear
Mm.
friend, maybe you all have someone like this. He likes to tell me everything that happened that day. You know, he gives me the whole list. That's not a story. That's a list. That's a grocery list. You know, if I'm going to talk to you about how I went to the post office today, well, let me tell you what happened to the post office. I was sitting there, I'm in line, I've got so many things on my mind. I've got all these things, the FedEx boxes, they're about to fall over. And all of a sudden, this little kid who my box falls in front of looks up at me. And I see something in him that I'd forgotten. I see this kind of joy, and I see this kind of connection, and I see this kind of presence. And he gives me this box and he puts it into my hand, and I feel the gift of connection. You know, I'm just making this up. But I'm going to tell you, if I went to the post office, there's going to be a reason why I told you, you know, and it's going to be something that came alive in me. It's an experience that I want to share. And so again, it's knowing the power of your voice and the potency of it. Okay, so Amy said, someone said it was a spell, and I love that. Gosh, yes, Ari, it's a spell. And this is something that, you know, so many people make predictions about the future without understanding the power of their language. So then we start casting spells. Think about that when you say, oh, there's going to be no um, fish in the ocean 2050. Cancel that. You know, we can do things to help heal the ocean. You know, why would we cast a spell as if making that true? Because we're going to start acting as if that's true. We're going to create a role for ourselves in that story. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Claudia is saying a story is deep inside of an experience. Yes, Jess is saying it's the passing of knowledge, right? There's wisdom stories, there's teaching stories. I often think about Me Too movement, and when you start to listen to all those stories, so many of them were so similar, and it was so heartbreaking for me on many levels. When you think of if we had just told our stories, if we just told our stories, then the next generation doesn't have to repeat them. You know, so can we come into a place where we understand we have to tell these warning stories? We have to tell our wisdom stories. Franklin is saying a story engages the mind and imagination. Right, now here's a fun fact. It does, it engages our imagination. When I tell you a story that takes place at the bottom of an ocean, where there is this extraordinary, luminescent, glowing white unicorn, and on her back is this itsy bitsy tiny frog. And they're galloping through the ocean, leaving sparkles dust behind them. Okay. How many of you went on that journey with me just now? Okay. So, what we location traveled, we reality bended, we created new situations. I've never seen a frog and a unicorn back in the ocean before myself. You know, what happened is that the frontal lobe of my brain started to activate into creating a scene. And if you had the neurotransmitters, you would see that that's the part of my brain that got really engaged. As you started to create that imagery in your own mind, the same part of your brain engaged. So what I'm calling magic, where we just time traveled, reality bended, did all these things, you know, Princeton calls neural coupling, where we actually have this connection that happens. And so there's so much that's transmitted through stories. Sometimes we begin, you know, these classes and I ask you to invite joy just to come live into your body as if it's a friend, as if it's an energy that you can say, how does this live? And if I invite this energy or love or peace or grace, if I invite this energy to live in me and I speak from here, how does that then come and have a place and a role in your life? Because we're sharing a story and we're sharing a place that it's being created from. Um, Michelina, that's such a fun name to say. Michelina is saying a story as a way of understanding the world. Right. It gives us a perspective. But look at this, right? Because we're in a time, if I was to create a mythic story of our time, I would say that we are living in the time of many stories happening at once. Right? You can put 10 people together and they are going to tell you 10 different realities about what's happening in our country, for those of us in the United States, in our world, you know. And so we're being asked to do something that humans have never been asked to do before. We're being asked to actually learn how to coexist with many different belief systems at once, many different stories. This is kind of new in the big scope of humans on the planet, right? When you think about, we emerged out of one tribe, out of one belief system, out of one creation story of who we were and why we were and how the world worked. Now all of us are coming together and having to figure out how to negotiate all these realities at once. So if things feel weird, this is where you get to be as a sacred storyteller, right? I'm going to invite you over and over again. How big can you make your story? How big can it be? You can, and people say, that person, they're so full of it, and blah, 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 and then their perspective on vaccine and their perspective on corona. How big as a sacred storyteller can you be just to listen to the story? Can you get out of the facts and information and go into the meta narrative? Okay, this is a superpower if there's ever one, where you can start to hear the meta narrative of what are they trying to say. We can argue and fight over facts and information till the cows come home. I don't know where your cows are if they're coming home, but anyway, it's like, but like, if we can get into the narrative, we can actually hear what they're saying. We can hear fear, we can hear caring, we can hear love. We can get to we can find the places where our souls, where our human selves can align. So this is really, if there's any superpower that I want to evoke, is this capacity to come into the biggest story as possible. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how do we do that. Mel is saying a story is a blueprint of consciousness, pathways to journey upon. Yeah, I love that. And so gosh, you guys are like on fire. And we're gonna keep going through. But I want a story transmits something, a feeling, a teaching, inspiration. Yeah, it's a journey, right? There's a middle and an end. This is one of the thing that thank you, Moshe. It's like you know how to tell stories. If someone gives you 6 bullet points to how to tell a story, take those bullet points and burn them. Because what that's going to be is that's going to be a clone of a story. It's going to be a clone. It's not going to have a heartbeat in it. I want to invite you into creating a story that has a life into it. And because you're human and because we're made out of stories, you can't mess this up. It's absolutely impossible. So that's another thing I just want to give to you, that you are a storytelling animal. There's a book written like that. You know how to do this. And if there's any key, it's about listening, truly knowing how to listen to your story. So now we're going to dive into this other idea of what is a sacred story? What is a sacred story? How is it different? You're going to be quiet on me. This is great. Sacred stories transmute pain. They bring understanding, clarity, wisdom, and transformation. So Janelle just spoke to that sacred stories are they've got a purpose. They've got a job. They're in service to something. Right? She just spoke to that right off the bat. So when you come into relationship with a sacred story, you get a little juice. You feel kind of good. You get a little more pep in your step. You feel good about yourself. You get inspired, you get motivated, you get activated, or you feel kind and you feel generous. And some part of you opens to see something in a way that you never would have seen it before. You can't even believe that you're actually being compassionate towards this perspective when you knew that you were right and they were wrong, that something's shifted inside you. Sacred stories can do that. They can get us out of the ego. Um, Thank you, Janelle. It's the biggest of tents, right? Diane saying it's a big story. It gives us access to maybe our highest selves. It gives us access to a bigger story. So we're already seeing also it holds the keys to liberation, right? That's what a sacred story is. Stories that are out of the material world and into the spiritual, says Karen. And so, right. So now you just use that word spirit. So let's play with that, right? And so when we talk about sacred, first of all, that's a trap, because as soon as we call something sacred, we're inherently, by employing the language, calling something else not sacred. So that's kind of like, oh man, but why do we have to call? Why do we have to call in this language? I would say is because it's not so commonplace. It's not so immersed and woven into our everyday way of being. So we call on this language. And so, what does it mean when we call something sacred or a sacred story? We're saying, I see the life in you. I honor and revere the life force that lives inside you. Okay, so now when we're saying that a sacred story, we're saying, oh, it's got, what was just in the spirit living inside it. It's got a soul living inside of it. So when I tell a sacred story about the time that I went through a big healing crisis, this story isn't about me. This is a universal story. It becomes about us. When I come in to give a sacred story, it means that I have a giveaway. I has a gift. When I come in to tell a sacred story, I better prepare people to catch it. Didn't I do that for you? I gave you an opportunity to come into yourself, to get grounded and to focus and to listen for yourself. You know, so these are, and when you come into a sacred story, for me, it is the most humbling opportunity because I don't have to have the answer. I don't even have to know how it's going to go. What I do have to do is be willing to collaborate. And that collaboration is that listening, that deep listening. And some people are going to use the language of the muse. Some people are going to say ancestors. Some are going to say it's the earth speaking out loud. Some are going to say that it's guides, it's angels. Whatever your language is, I'm just going to call it that divine life force. That life force that can live through us. And so when I look at a sacred story, I know that it's in service of giving life. It's life force giving. You can look at the hardest things in the world. You can shine light in the darkest of corners through a sacred story. And here's the thing that I would just say when doing that is what determines a sacred story from just like from just repeating and telling the horrors of the world. A sacred story is going to have beauty inside of it. It's going to invite beauty because what does beauty do? It feeds the soul. We know this. So, and beauty can come in many ways. It can come in how the characters are expressed. It can come in the language. It can come in the intention. But we know that we're nourishing people. So a lot of this, this isn't the kind of thing that you can like squish your head. For those of you who just want to do it and do it right, if any of you are like that, I understand. You can't squish your eyebrows together and just figure it out. It's something else. It's about going for a walk in the woods. It's about deeply listening. It's about committing to know that something wants to be lived through you and it can come in the form of a story. Oh, I'm not going to go down the road of defining beauty. But I bet we all have our own definition of beauty. I think, what is it? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I'm not touching that one. Nice try. Okay, so I want to invite you into, I'm gonna read a little story for you, and I'm gonna invite you to play with me on this one. So this comes from Andy Stanley. He says, sometimes I just wanted to stop. Talk of COVID, looting, brutality, I lose my way. I become convinced that this new normal is real life. Then I meet an 87-year-old who talks of living through polio and diphtheria, Vietnam protests, and yet is still enchanted with life. He seemed surprised when I said that 2020 must be especially challenging for him. No, he said slowly, looking me straight in the eyes. I learned a long time ago to not see the world through the printed headlines. I see the world through the people that surround me. I see the world with the realization that we love big. Therefore, I just choose to write my own headlines. Husband loves wife today. Family drops everything to come to grandma's bedside. He patted my hand. Old man makes new friend. His worlds collide with my worries, freeing them from the tether I'd been holding tight, and they float away. I am left with a renewed spirit and a new way to write my own headlines. So I want to invite you for a moment. We've been fed a lot of headlines to engage your capacity as a storyteller, as a sacred storyteller, as someone who sees all the things. What's the headline that you would write? And you can just write about today. You can place it into the chat box. What's the headline that you can write? How are you going to take control of the narrative? Falcon flies along the lake shore, says Karen. Right, seeing the beauty, seeing the life. I'm going to let you guys come up with that, and I'm going to bring up a slide for you to experience. Teacher rests. Ah, oh, that's great. Kestrels visit my backyard treetop. What a beautiful world, opening to all that is, weaving into creation a gathering with sisters. I decided in advance that I would have a beautiful day, so that my headline would be Woman Stays Present and Shows Up for Herself in Each Moment, showing up to the call without fanfare. Circus cloud food sprinkles the earth with harmonious breaths. All say, ah, extraordinary nasturtiums. I can't read all of these. You guys can keep reading them, you know. But look at how we can come into as simple as that, as claiming the allness of the day. Not that things aren't going to go crazy, especially when things go crazy. People need us as sacred storytellers, especially when the upsets, especially when the shadow is comes to light, you know, and we're forced to see these different parts of ourselves and our world that perhaps wasn't so easy to look at. But now we're in, here's a great one for you. Do you know that the word apocalypse, God, that word has been stolen. Apocalypse, when you look at the Greek meaning of it, it means the lifting of the veils. Michael Meade brings us to this. You know, he's really looked at and studied into it. So when you go back to the origin of it, it's like going to Oz and lifting back the curtain. So now when people are saying, "Oh my God, we're living in apocalyptic times," you know, as if it's the bad thing, because it's the word's been hijacked and associated with all these negative visions of the future. We, as sacred storytellers, of lovers of language and understanding that the words hold the true codes, you know, we can say, oh, apocalyptic times. Well, this is exciting. We can finally see what's going on. We can finally see what's running the show. And now we can finally really choose a role and which role we want to play in it. So I want to show you a little fun overview of what does it look like to walk the path of a sacred storyteller. And oh gosh, uh-oh, I don't know how to make this big enough for you. Dun, 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 dun. Aha. Okay. So this is, I just wanted to show you, you know, like if you're saying, if you're beginning to feel jazzed and you're like, whoa, this world of sacred storytelling, Leo's going fast, but I'm beginning to catch, I'm catching the resonance. I'm catching something's coming alive. This might be something that I want to, a path I might want to step onto. I just wanted to show you kind of the path of what it can look like. So the first thing is courting the muse. You know, this is like you want to create this relationship with the unseen world. You know, and sometimes that could be as simple as creating an altar, setting the intention, lighting a candle every day for your practice, or just for inviting in that inspiration. This to me takes you onto the path of psychic silence. And I have a whole guidebook that I wrote on creating psychic silence, and it's so that you can clear the clutter of who wants you and the laundry list and all the things to do that relate to matter, so that you can come into that place of silence. Some people call this meditation. As a creator, I call it psychic silence. So I can actually hear the stories that are asking to come through me on this time. You know, the thing that's not here that I would actually say even goes before courting the muse, I need to add this, is understanding what you are in service to. So I'm going to invite you right now, really consider, what is it that you're in service to? You know, you might have spoken it out loud, you might not speak it out loud, you might just act on it. Are you in service to love and connection? Are you in service to healing? You know, are you in service to fear? You know, we're all in service to different things in different ways. It's what we're giving our energy to. But when you think about what are the stories that you want to call to you and call to be lived through you. So as you understand that path of psychic silence, eventually you're going to have to see all the barriers that are in front of you, all those things that stymie your voice. You know, we started with rolling the voice. So, wow, we could liberate this space so it can know that there's a channel, there's a highway for it to actually run. So we need to see all the barriers and blocks that are there. We'll need to clear them. And I love clearing them through the creative process because it's really, really fun. Then, you know, one of the things that we want to do is we want to look behind us. You know, whenever I say, start with your storytelling process. Go to the original stories. Go to the creation myths. You know, those are going to teach you about the rhythm of story. And so you can't lose your way once you start listening to all these old stories that are so strong that they keep living through us. So go learn the old stories. Then you got to look within you. What are the stories that created you? What made you? These are, story, one way that you talk about story, or I talk about it's an operating system. It teaches us our values, our belief systems, but most importantly, I think, they teach us what we believe is possible. So to understand, and before you start speaking your story, you want to understand what are the stories that are consciously and unconsciously living inside of you. Then you get to play with your archetype of a storyteller. We're going to do that in just a minute. Then you really got to claim the power of your gift. There's a whole process that we go through. Claim the power of your gift. Because what does that do? But it amplifies it. It amplifies it and it brings you closer to the people who will be served by your gift. There's the whole developing or scaling craft. This is for realsies, but we don't start there. We start with developing a relationship with that creative life force. We take a journey into the myths. We look at the world that we're in and we say, what do you need? I feel like this is a very crucial part of being a sacred storyteller. It's not just what wants to come through me, right? It's what is needed and how does that want to be lived through me? Then there's this capacity to change a story. And we're going to go over that in just a second. And you alchemize your stories into medicine. And then you offer it as a gift. That's one way of looking at the journey of a storyteller. Oh gosh, hold on. It's all fun and games till you lose your PowerPoint. So I want to ask you, where are you on your journey? Where are you in your journey? Do you, and I'm going to give you a couple of different archetypal energies to play with and think about. Are you one of these or are you another one? So I'm just going to give you a little list. It's going to be fun. And you can just write them all in the chat box. So are you the sage? Are you that person that you know your story, you know its power, and you're ready to share the gift? You're right there. You understand that you've got wisdom stories to tell, and you're not going to go without leaving them behind because you understand how valuable they are. Are you the muse? You're inspired. You're inspiring. And you know that's part of your magic is to inspire this with others with your story. Are you the caterpillar? You're holding the possibility of what you might become. And you know you've got something special in you. I'm going to use that. I'm going to pause with that word special because Stephen Jenkinson, who is one of my favorite beloved teachers, talks about the distinction between being important and being meaningful. So special is like it's sort of an illness of the Western world. But what is it that you know that you've got something meaningful in you and you want it to emerge and you're waiting for it to emerge? Are you in the chrysalis? I think a lot of us just went through this in 2020. Are you in the chrysalis? You know that you're in the big dissolve. You don't know which way is up. What was isn't anymore, but you're saying yes to the truth of what you are by being here in the chrysalis. And now you are learning how to live in the unknown. You're following the scent of what's calling to you. Are you in that state of being a butterfly? You got your wings, you're flying high, and you are seeking that flower that you can pollinate, otherwise known as where to give your gifts. Stephen Jenkinson says that we live our life in 3 acts. The first act is discovering and cultivating our gifts. The second act is finding the places and people who want to receive our gifts. And the third act, well, that's the final act. So I want to give you an opportunity. I'm just looking here. We've got healing, creation, unabashed freedom, service to creating, and how the process draws people together. And in the deep process of claiming my gifts, says Claudia. I'm in the spiral, always floating between. Love it. We've gotten a lot of sages in here. The Holy Fool. Thank you, Franklin. That's such a great role. So not many people understand it. Okay, beautiful. Right, and I don't know. I love that, Amy. You just don't know. You can always listen for it, and that you can trust your imagination. What mythos, what archetype are you in, and trusting it. So I wanted to give you a couple of basic skills for how to see through the dark. You know, I one of my favorite things on the planet is to go snorkeling, and and I feel like this is the ultimate metaphor. Because when I go in the ocean, and look, the ocean is the symbol for consciousness, right? So like, I couldn't be more poetic if I'd written it myself. But when I go in the ocean, if I don't have my goggles on, there's a lot of like, it's like I don't know how to relate to what's around me. I might get thrown up against some coral. I might be living in fear that there's a shark back there. I might miss all the beauty of the gorgeous parrotfishes. It's like I can't see. So I invite you to think the same thing as in the world of storytelling and the world of life. So I invite you to put on your sacred storyteller goggles, and so that you can see through the consciousness and you can see through the stories of our time. And so I invite you to really start looking for, where are those sacred stories and how are they living in your life? What about zombie stories? Where are they taking over your life? And what is a zombie story? It's kind of on the opposite spectrum of a sacred story. It's sucking the life out of the room. It's planting seeds of fear. It's planting seeds of hate. It's othering. You'd want to die a little after you watch a zombie story. Think about all the television. Some television is absolutely brilliant. Some of it's just filled with zombie stories. How did we see? There's some amazing research that talks about the amount of violence in television against women. What does that teach both men and women about what to expect? So it's like, really start looking around, and like, what's a zombie story, and just noticing it. You don't have to be afraid of it, because as sacred storyteller, you can decide, you can have discernment, which story are you going to take and allow to plant into your garden and give your precious life force and voice to, or which ones are you just going to let roll on by. I'm going to ask you also, so now you've got your spidey goggles on, you're noticing what kind of stories are around you. Now we're going to jump into, how do we make that story into a bigger story? So one of the quickest and easiest ways is to examine, how good was your, what's the name? Oh my God, the person who does casting, how good are the roles? I say the person that did casting for the climate story, for the climate narrative, bad casting. They made Change the bad guy. This is insane when you think that we've made Change into like the bad character. Change is the literal nature of our planet. She changes. That's what she does. I'm not talking about the science of that it's changing at a pace that's been impacted by humans. Yes, that's happening too, but that we're actually instilling a sense of fear, and that we're instilling this idea that change is bad and is wrong through that narrative. Okay, so what I want you to do is start looking at the stories and being like, wait, how have the roles been cast, and have they been cast in the right way? One of the things that you can do, so that's one of the things. So that's the second thing. The third thing that you can do is, how skilled are you at reframing? How can you reframe something? So if I was to tell you about my health crisis, I could go, oh, poor me. Oh, it was so scary. It's horrible. Or I can say, wow, I went through an initiation. I was initiated by life, and it called out some things, and there was fear, and it was horrible, and I didn't want to do it, and I didn't choose it, but wow, it called out these other things in me. And if I wasn't claiming my story as a form of initiation, I might never have the opportunity to look for, name, and claim the gifts that were called out for me in the process. So that's an instant reframe. So I really invite you to look at all the places in your life that are causing lots of suffering and reclaim them as initiation. And I call it the sumo wrestling move. You turn the story upside down and inside out. My favorite thing is, go to that person that is really causing you a pain in your butt, that is such the bad guy. Okay, recast them into the master teacher. Whoa. The instant thing that it does is it puts you out of the victim role. So we have an instantaneous power exchange. Okay, so now it completely changes. What if that person was actually in service to your soul and the lesson that you came here to live? I'm playing with a specific worldview here, right? It might not be yours, but still, let's play for a moment. This perspective. What if that person, that being that was causing so much harm, so much disruption, so much suffering, was actually asking you to put something down that no one else would and to strengthen something else in you that no one else has dared to do? It's a really fun game to play, and it changes your role as well as their role. It gives you an opportunity to get into the biggest story possible. And so this is what I'm going to invite you to to engage. It's a new sport. How big can your story be? And I invite you to do that every day. How big? How big can you make your story? So one of the things I'm going to share with you is a moment in my life when I really listened to fear. I listened to my fear, and I listened as it was spoken through the voice of others. And what I didn't understand was that fear has the potential to be a great ally. But I didn't know it. I thought that fear was the bad guy, and I ran away from it. And I ran right away from my fear of rejection. I ran away from my fear of abandonment, and I ran away from my life. And that moment of running away led me into such a discord that my body actually got really sick. And I had an absolute emergent health crisis. And I was really young. And what I realized is that this was one of the greatest gifts of my life, because I was actually told I could lose my voice. They were cutting across my throat, they were cutting a tumor out, and I thought I was going to lose my voice. And I had this moment where I realized that this was the greatest gift, because it showed me at a very young age that life is something that's chosen. In some ways, it's given to us. We're given a body to live life through. But I wasn't necessarily living mine. I was living someone else's. I was living what I was supposed to be. And that was actually killing me. And so there's this word in Hawaiian, it's kuleana, and it means responsibility. We each have our own kuleana. And mine, kuleana, or part of it, is to protect this planet. I know that's part of my kuleana. And I know that wants to be lived through me in many ways. And some people say save the planet. Some people say heal the planet. But what I understand as part of my kuleana and part of protecting it is to really share what I learn. And what I've come to understand about storytelling is that this is one of those ways that we can come together as humans. It gives us something, a way to have the strength and the tools to face the times that we're in, but also face each other. That I understand that story is the absolute root of healing, both our bodies, both our relationship to the natural world. And then that leads to all the other things. But I do know that it starts at home, and this is the home, and that storytelling holds the key. So that's why I do these classes, because it's part of my kuleana. It's part of my responsibility to share what I learn, and I love it. I absolutely, absolutely love doing it. And it's an honor because it brings me into connection with some of the coolest people on the planet. And I've got an opportunity to gather in some of the most magnificent master teachers of our time in the name of holding together and keeping alive this oral tradition. And also at the very cornerstone of it is this reclaiming of an art form that has been stolen, has been hijacked, and is being used against us. And if you don't understand what a story is, and if you don't understand the power of it, it can be used against you. That's why I say, throw those 6 bullet points out the window, because that is the teaching and creation of clones. And we need sacred stories. We need stories that have life in them and life that serves life. And you are the keys to that. So I tell this story, I do this class as a way of also introducing a bigger class that we're all doing. So if you feel full and nourished and you're like, I'm out, great, enjoy. But if something has come alive inside of you, if something's resonating, if something's coming in your bones, if your feet are tingling, if your mind is going wild with ways that you could be as a storyteller that is true to you and your life and the way that it wants to be expressed through you, and you want to discover it, then I'm going to tell you a couple of things and ways that we can continue to play. And so a course that's coming up right now is called Speak Your Spark. And I love this course. This course was a brainchild that came out of, thank you, Franklin, that was really sweet. Um, that came out of, gosh, your guys' compliments are so sweet. I've never presented it in this way. For those of you who've been seeing me present this class in the same way, I've never shared this part. So I really appreciate your reflection. I've put the link to the class in the chat box, and I would suggest grabbing it right now because emails are weird and they end up in spam and promotions folder, and you might miss the replay. And so if you're even considering for a second that you're interested in this, I would just say go grab that link because that will take you straight to my website. So what I love to do is I love to awaken your unique voice, your unique passion, your unique purpose. And this course is actually the grand finale of a year-long program. And what they did is they go through all the different chakras of the body, and we look at how is your creative life force wanting to come alive? How is it going to move? And what's stuck? Like what's stuck in there? And once we get to understand the resistance, we're going to get to the core of your gift. I told you, I gave you a little bit of insight. One of my biggest fears, one of my biggest blocks was my fear of rejection. Little did I know that facing my fear of rejection would force me to pop out with the greatest gift that I have to offer. But I had to get strong and I had to face it head on. And if there's anything that I want to offer is that coming into community to do this makes those things that feel really hard and scary and unbearable super freaking fun. And we get to expand and we get to catapult our learning together. Because what Loke is learning, when she starts speaking to it, I'm like, I got that learning too. I got that gift. What Ray's doing, it's like, whoa, I got that transmission too. And so it happens. Cindy, it's like all these things. It's like we help expand and increase our collective learning. And that's why I like doing this together. And that's why I hate, and I'm just going to say it. Oh gosh, I use the word hate. I like doing these live. Everyone's like, Leah, do evergreen courses. And sure, I offer a couple of them. But if I'm really honest about how change happens, and my commitment and passion around change, it happens when we're together in real time. There's a transmission that happens. So what I would say is I'll read you this one of my, it's hard for me to explain the courses, but I find that people that go through them actually explain them much better. So if anyone that's been through a class, you want to put a little note in the chat box about your experience, feel free. I'm going to read you this one because this course, what I'll tell you about this course is that we do all the things. We really look at what's in your third chakra, what's blocking it, what are your stories to tell. This one's really focused on passion and purpose, meaning that the world needs everyone on deck right now. But that doesn't mean that we're all doing it in the same way. We're doing it all through our unique ways. I think of it like a forest. We need the mushrooms, we need the dead trees falling, we need the birds. And if we all are true to our unique role, now we've got a healthy ecosystem. So that's my jazz. I love understanding. For me, I am so passionate about whales. I love those guys so much. I travel around the world in weird ways just so I can swim in their song. And I'm going to share with you a great story, which I hope invokes your love for them. I'm never going to go tell you not to go kill a whale with so many but I will do everything I can to bring you into connection to love and your own connection with the ocean. And once I bring you there, I have absolute complete faith that ocean's going to do her job. Whales are going to do their job. And it's going to be better off for it. So I know my role in that. And this is a class where you get to come into your passion, your purpose, and how does it want to be expressed through creativity, through your genius, through your love. And so we're also bringing in all these extraordinary guest teachers, people who are going to look at your body. How is your body in alignment? How is your voice? Chloe is so fun. You're just like, as soon as she comes on, you just start laughing and giggling, and because she's so the transmission. And the next thing you know, you're singing and you're having fun and you're like, there's no problem. And whatever fear you might have had is gone. We have Erin, who's just she talk about coming into slow motion. She actually lives in one of the remote parts, the jungle of Maui. You're never going to come into contact with her in any other way. And she's going to bring you into a sense of being present. That she's one of my favorite teachers in doing that, real presence, fine attunement. We also have Celia, who is one of my favorite humans on the planet. I'm so excited to fold her in, and she's going to really speak to you about how to be on the stage and how to make it a sacred art to speak in front of other people, how to bring joy and fun and play to that expression. And then we also have Jan, who's going to really come into like, how do you carry these old stories and understand what they bring to our modern world? So you're going to get to learn a little bit about carrying those old stories. And then we have Justin, and we're going to have 2 classes from Justin. And he's talking a lot about how do we bring our love and passion for all people in this time? How do we deal with race relations? You know, how do we talk about these different things that are happening and bring our voice and our love and all that wants to be lived through us in a good way? And that was a very important piece. How do we, as sacred storytellers, live in the joy and pleasure of creation while meeting the times that we're living in head on and in community? So here's what Devi said about the first sanctuary class, and this is considered a sanctuary class. She said, "Nothing could have prepared me for the immensity or inner treasures unearthed during sanctuary. I only knew my soul was calling from the desert, aching to be known and its secrets to be unleashed. I do not consider myself a storyteller, nor came to tell stories. Medicine is what I needed, the kind you find in sacred arts, rituals, symbols, and the sacred mother of life. The journey weaved together, the scattered parts, the preciousness and beauty surrounded me, and the soul crafting needed to claim the truth of my existence." I mean, you can't write that in marketing copy. I'm just telling you, it's so hard to tell people what happens. So that's why it's like, you know, I can tell you the bullet points and all that, but really it's like we're coming together to live in the biggest story that we possibly can. And that's what this is about. So that is our class for today. I'm going to read you that first quote again, because now that we've gone through all this together, I want to anchor that one in. And then I'll stay on for as long as you want to. If you have questions, I'll stick around and answer questions. And I'll also tell you about 2 other things that are floating around that you can play in. So Mahatma Gandhi, he taught us to remember that our thoughts generate words, our words generate actions, our actions generate habits, our habits generate character, and our character breeds destiny. So may the stories that are asking to be lived through you be carried forward. May they find the gifts, may your gifts emerge through them. And may the people who need your gifts, may they know what you have to give and may they be able to receive it. So that is our class today. Hi, Dominique. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. There's 2 other things that I'm just going to tell you about, which is there's something called the Story Lab, the Story Starter Lab. And this is something that is, if you're one of those people that you want to, you're like, I don't want all that, but I just want to like come together and have some creative prompts, then this is a place for you just to come together. You can create stories of your own desire and you can get feedback and workshop them. So I'm just going to put that link in there as well. And then there's one other thing that I do, which is I work with people. I do this form of mystic storytelling and I do one-on-one sessions with people. These are called soul stories. And I'll just lead you to that website. And then I work with people one-on-one as well. So you might be saying, well, I've got some stories to tell and I'm at this threshold and I'm being initiated by life. I don't want to work with people. I just want one-on-one. I just want that guide to help me walk across that threshold. I work with people in that way too. Thank you, Franklin. So now I will. I know I said I'll take questions. Now I really will take questions if anyone has them. Okay. Yes, Ray. Oops, you have to unmute, love.
I've heard you say this before. It's a little bit of a question and a little bit of a comment. Why are you so uncomfortable with making this separation between the sacred and the not sacred? Because it seems to me that's the whole point of sacred. And it's not to say going to the bathroom can't be sacred, but it's that there truly is a difference, and the profane, the not sacred, is essential to our lives.
Mhm.
And the world would not exist without the not sacred. And I feel like I hear a lot of hesitation from you to own that the sacred is sacred and the profane is profane.
Yeah, I think when I speak to that part, I'm speaking through a specific perspective and lens of saying, what would it be if I looked at everything as if it had a life force in it and brought reverence and to it? So what if that I wouldn't treat this as garbage? I looked at this and I said, "Oh my, there was a resource claimed from our earth. Oh my, what journey you have taken where you were stolen from your homeland and forced into such to be claimed and to be an alchemy and like and what happened? Oh my, like what a miracle you are that I don't have to go use my spindle and bow to make fire, but that this is a miracle of life right in front of me." And so I would say is yes and yes to everything that you said. And when I speak to that naming that when we call something sacred, because we live in a time when so many of us, not all of us, but so many of us have lost our relationship of seeing the life and the divine in all things, then we need to call on that language because it's no longer a part of our world perspective. It's really understood now as an indigenous perspective. So I say yes and. Any other questions? Thank you, Mel. Okay. Well then,
I have a
Janelle.
question.
Yeah,
Where did
absolutely.
you learn all this?
um, you know, I would say it was a combination of things. So part of it is I've spent a lot of years by myself living in very remote places in the woods and have done a lot of
Oh.
listening. And so I would say, if I'm really honest with you, the core of my understanding about what is a sacred story came from my own deep listening. But then there were other people in our world that are drinking from the same stream. So like I was really afraid to come out and tell people that I thought stories were living beings. Like I was like, oh man, if I say that, people are going to think I'm crazy. But Charles Eisenstein says that. So when I heard Charles say it, I'm like, oh, well then if he can say it, I can say it, you know. I've studied with, Carolyn Casey, Michael Mead. When I saw Martin Shaw perform his storytelling, this transmission came through me where all of a sudden I understood my connection with the natural world with story. And I had never understood that those two were deeply interwoven. And it wasn't necessarily what he taught, it was literally how he carried story. So I would say a lot of it just came with getting as close as I could to people who were walking on the path of mastery, and it comes more and more alive. And so part of it's studying. Stephen Jenkinson, he makes a lot of dots connect, and then you know the own journey.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Hmm. Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for this. I'm so happy I was here. Do you write with like pen and paper or on your computer?
I can't write with pen and paper, unfortunately. Mostly because my handwriting's so bad, but also because it comes through so fast that I can
So do you
type fast,
talk?
but I can write. I don't like talking, and partly because some people do, and so I so think that it's really about your true essence of like how spirit works through you. I'm afraid to engage my ego brain, so sometimes when I start talking and I'm starting to find the right words, my ego can get clicked in. But I'll tell you, like when I do soul stories, that is a direct channel, so that those I just speak into presence. But when I'm writing story, I like to write. It's easier for me to be in that channel. Great question, though. And I think it's such a personal one. Like, how do we each do it? How do we each come into our connection, our way of expressing? I know some people who've written their whole book just through transmission, through. So I think, try a couple different techniques. Try and see what works best for you. Yeah, I love that. Story is code. All right. Any other questions? Oh, you know what I forgot to tell? This is where I can't believe I forgot to tell you guys this. Um, for everyone that registers this week, and usually I say in the next couple days, we offer you the free library of master teachers. So all those people that I just mentioned have been guest teachers in years past in the School for Sacred Storytelling. And I love it. I love giving people the opportunity to have access to that library. And so I sell it for $197. So if you're saying, oh, you know what? I don't want the class, but wow, to have a library of over 40 hours of like master classes all focused on this piece of storytelling, you can come get that library. Or when you join the class, I give it to you as a gift. And then I also give you, and this is kind of a big deal, 33 creative prompts to heal the world. And these are super fun. These are 33 videos. One shows up every day in your inbox, and you get to get that. You don't have to wait for class to start next week. You know, you can get started tomorrow in terms of getting that creativity and that creative life force going in your world. Um, Deanne, do you have a question? Dominique says, and if we already have both, then you're a lucky dog. I don't, do you have the 33 prompts already? Did you already get them? Oh, well, gosh, then I'll have to find something else for you. That can be arranged.
Yes,
Oh.
I do have a question and a comment.
Okay.
I am from the other side of North America, in a little place called, a little island called Newfoundland, on the east coast of Canada. And this island is still very, very strong when it comes to the oral tradition of storytelling. It's how we pass on information. It's kind of how we help each other get through things. And it's kind of so ingrained in us, we don't even realize we're doing it until you kind of get outside of Newfoundland and realize like people don't talk to each other like we do here on the island, in that we don't tell the story because people want things in short point form and then move on, right? Like don't have time to listen. Yeah. And so we're a much slower culture here, we'll say. But one of the things we do when things are really, really rough, we really use storytelling as like a comic relief. And then we have a lot of dance and song as a part of the culture that kind of, it's all a part of it. And so I always felt it was between that and being in the woods and being all those things, I always was very, very connected to the earth ever since I was very, very young. And I've gone through lots of stuff, but I've been really searching. I've been, you know, there's lots of people have said you should do, you know, kind of calling me out. And one of the things is to write my story. And you hear apprehension in my voice because I really want to inspire folks, but there's parts of the story that are so personal that you don't know if you really want to share that, but maybe you should. And my question is how that fear of other people knowing your story or all of your story, how do you get past that? Like, how do you make peace with that? Or how, you know, it doesn't really matter what the other person, you know, what they think is, whoever actually is inspired by that is what's important.
Okay, so I'm gonna speak to your question. This is such an important question. You know, and what I'm hearing you speak to is what are the blocks too? Like what blocks that capacity? And I also just want to honor you live in a smaller island, right? Yeah. So it's like she's living in a real world small community. So there's different consequences to telling our stories in different places. You know, I tell a really personal story on a stage in San Francisco. I don't have to face the consequence of that. you know. So it's like, I just want to get really like, so I really want to honor what you're speaking to.
Exactly.
It's such a bigger question, but what I'm going to teach you in this or share in this moment is sometimes we can tell there's a really famous storytelling expression that says it's a true story and it really happened. Okay, so meaning that you can tell a lot of truth without telling the facts and information. Sometimes we tell the facts and information, sometimes we don't. You can take a story that happened to you and you can flip it and put it into the mythic dimension. You know, how many of us have learned stories through animals, you know, through fairy tales? Those are all real circumstances, real values, real things that are being expressed, real warning stories without getting caught in the facts and information. So what I would do if we were in a situation we were working together is we would really get to what is this story in service to? That's the first question I always like to ask when a story wants to come through. What is it in service to? And then you can start getting to what form does it need to be expressed through. Those are two different things. So I'll stop there with that question, but it's a really worthy one, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Deborah and then Carrie.
Hi, I'm kind of, first of all, I'm just really shy. And so the fact that I'm allowing myself to be visible is odd, but the purpose stands out really strong. And that's why I'm giving voice to it. I have a story within me that's really important for me to write, not only for my own personal healing, but the way in which I will be able to participate in the healing of all of the loved ones that I have, my beloveds, which are all animals everywhere that are subject to exploitation, pain, and cruelty. I know that within me there's a way through writing story that I can reach into hearts that are closed and people that hurt so deeply, not only them, but when they hurt me too. It's there, I feel it, but the pain I feel when I become aware of somebody that's hurting or in trouble, it's just, it blocks my way to the story. And sometimes I feel a rage that is beyond my capacity to handle. So I guess what I'm saying is just in terms of my participation here in your group, if there's a way that you can help me to find the story I can't yet reach.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that, and thank you for meeting fear of speaking in groups. I think it's what shyness, meeting your shyness. What a gift to hear your voice. What I'm seeing in you, you know, as you're speaking, is what it is to be an empath. Sometimes empaths get overwhelmed by their emotion, and it can be a very I don't mean this in a negative way. It can be debilitating, you know. And so part of it is like, how do you work with that energy? You know, and that's what I hear you asking. You know, it's like the emotion can be overwhelming. How do I share this with other people without bringing them into the trenches of despair? You know, because I don't think that's where you want to bring them. You want to, what I imagine is that you want to bring them into their love of these beings. So that then, and what does Jacques say? But we protect the things that we love. So again, I mean, not to be repetitive, I would come to you with this question of what are you in service to, and how do you lead people to the door of that? And your story is actually going to guide you. This is the hardest part. This is a sacred story. I can't tell you exactly how to do it, but we can really work with listening. How does a story want to emerge and be told through you? And what I hear in you is your love for these animals. And so I'd be curious if there is a specific story that you have to tell about, maybe a story that you rescued. And what is it that, an animal that you rescued, you know, and what does it offer the world, you know? So oftentimes when we bring people to love, we also have to tell them the hard facts, you know, and what's the risk and what's the consequence of being lost. So yours would be a multi-layered piece, because what you're saying is I'm telling a story with the intention and purpose for other people to get engaged and take action. You know, this is kind of my favorite kind of story. So you're speaking to my heart with this kind of story.
So. Not only to engage with in action, but to be immersed within the story themselves so that they feel themselves as a participant and rewriting how it is we live in the world and find within each other ourselves so that when we look at an animal, we see ourselves there. And then maybe make a choice not only for what is best for self in the small self, but what is best for self in all beings. I'm just looking to find a way so that we can all live in line with thought, emotion, word, deed, have it all line up and embrace that. And
Great.
I'm immersed in pain right now, so it's hard to get there.
Yeah. And this thing about pain that is kind of amazing, and this is where, yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far down this path because I know that Carrie's got a question, but it's like when we engage that creative life force, it gives us access to more, and sometimes when we're not engaged with the creative life force and giving it a form of expression, it can weigh us down. It can show up as depression. It can show up all these things. And so when we get into our creativity, it gives a way for that life force that's in us to be expressed and to live through in healthy ways. And so it's a bigger thing. But I'm going to move on because we've got a couple more questions. And I hope that answered enough of, yeah, okay. Carrie.
I have a practical question, so I'm not sure if this is the place about Speaker Spark.
That's practical.
I'm wanting to know a little bit about the time commitment and the energetic commitment beyond the 2 hours of the class.
Yes. Are you talking about homework? Are you talking about
homework and or small group work? And can I really get everything out of it that I'd like to, given my time constraints at this point in time?
Here's what I do. My style of hosting, if we were at a party, you come into my house, you would see a big buffet of tables, a big buffet of food, and just like any kind of good party, you get to choose and take what you want, and no one's going to judge you or have any story about you for what you didn't put on your plate, and so this class, it is a massive buffet where we'll have 6 weeks of classes where we meet on Tuesdays for 2 hours as a group. Then, and what this, Carrie, from being in classes before, what I like to do at the very beginning of class is ask everyone, what is it that you want to commit to? Like, where's your win? Because there's nothing that upsets me more personally. And if people get caught in that weird school spiral of not doing it right, that's not our game. That's not where we are. So I say, where's your win? You might say, I just show up to class and I get to immerse and I'm here to receive. Or you might say, I'm going to go to every single class and I'm going to do everything and I'm going to finish 4 stories or whatever. I won't have an opportunity to finish 4 stories. But it's like, I'm going to do everything. It's like, for me, the win is for you being really honest about your capacity. This is one of the great secrets to storytellers or to creation. If we try to say that we're going to do the world and really what we can do is this much, why is it considered a loss when all we can do is this and this is our success? So in terms of the opportunity and what's on the buffet, we've got those 6 classes, and those will lead you on a journey, Then there's 5 master teachers. So then there's 5 extra bonus classes. You can say, I'm going to come to those, or I'm going to watch the recordings. You can say, I'm going to watch the recordings to everything. I always say coming live is where the juice is, because that's where you get to have interaction and meet with people and get feedback and communicate. And when we're in our classes, you break up into small groups. I'll never talk this much at once ever again. They're much more interactive. And then, what I've found in these groups is that what people absolutely love is the relationships that they're created that weave it all together, where they can really dive in deep. And so there are small groups. So you'll also be given, if you want, a small group to work with outside of class. I always tell people it's not a requirement, it's not a demand, it's an offering. And if you want that small group, you can have it. And some people I know continue to meet with their small groups way past class is done. And some people say, God, please don't make me do that. And I'm like, great. But for me, the win is just knowing what you want to do. So I make the offering, and then you decide what you want to do. You decide where your win is, and then you get to do that. And you'll have full access to all the classes forever. So if you can't come to all of them, then you can soak them up as you're ready. But I would say to really get the most out of it You know, if I'm really being honest with you, which is so important, like to really get the most out of it, I think coming live is best. I've had, so it's like you want to be able to, you know, get a good chunk in. I've had some people who participated in the class, but couldn't, like because they were in different time zones, couldn't actually come live. And so what they did was they got really active on our Facebook group, and they got really active with their group. So they watched the Facebook, you know, they watched the classes on their own schedule, but then they had that group that where they got to do the deep work even more. So it's just finding what's what's really right for you.
And then just following up, is there another opportunity? So I have fear of missing out. And if I can't take everything off the buffet table.
So this is the last sanctuary class for this year. In the fall, I believe we're going to start up a series again, but I'm not entirely positive. So it's like this is the completion of this cycle. The Story Starter Lab is far less commitment in terms of time and energy, so that could be a place where you could just come and play. And yeah, you've got the videos. So
thank you.
Okay. Amy, and then Jay Scott.
Oh, sorry, I didn't lower my hand. You answered my question. Thanks.
Okay, great. Jay Scott.
Hello. You might have answered these questions already. It's funny because I popped off afterwards because I wanted to read and look, and then I'm like, oh, I have some questions. So I'm glad you're still here. Basically, the difference between the speaker spark and the vision stories. If we add that on there, what's like the main big difference, and what? Yeah.
So Speaker Spark is really about it's looking at the third chakra. So there's the way that the year-long curriculum works is that we have a sanctuary course, which is a 6-week long course, and each of those goes through the different blocks. And what we do is we look at, this one's based on your third chakra. It's really focused on using your voice for purpose and passion. So you're going to have an opportunity to come to that real clarity. What's that thing that you care most about, and how can we play through creative forms to express your passion and purpose in the world? And you're going to get all these guest teachers that are going to focus on that. So that's going to be like our focal point for the course, and how you express yourself is going to be totally up to you. You might write a poem, you might sing a song, you might write an op-ed piece, you might, like, I have no idea. It's going to be whatever you want, but that's the focal. For then after each sanctuary series where we look at, okay, we clear the chakra, we play with creative life force, we remove the barriers, and then after that we do a story skills class. See, I'm not much of a marketer. I forget to mention these key things. So we do a story skills class, which is then you get to work and focus on, now that you've cleared all this, now we focus on just creating one story together. And so the focus, previously we did medicine stories, we did wisdom stories, we did teaching stories. Now we're doing vision stories, and so this is really looking at, how do we plant our vision for the future that we most want to see into the world, and what are the skills and techniques that you need to develop in order to tell that kind of story. And so that comes after this. So that is a 4-week class, and you just work on that one specific type of story. So it's very focused on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. In the Speak to Your Spark, are we actually working on a story, like you said, and so we're coming through that part, and we're going to have a story, and then in the vision part, we're going to have another story or add on to it, or how does that connect?
Yeah, so it's different. So in Speak Your Spark, I'm not going to determine how you express yourself. I'm going to give you a lot of different keys and a lot of different ways to find your way that brings you the most amount of pleasure, and where your genius lives and how you express yourself. So you'll get a lot of different ways, and there's no determination. I'm not going to force you down a certain kind of structure. It's really about finding yours. That's truly your unique voice. And then for the vision stories, we're all going to work on a very specific story structure together. You come out with a vision story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Milana.
Trying to, there we go. So can you please, hi, can you please tell me the name of the class for the vision stories, because I missed that.
It's called Vision Stories.
Okay, well, that's easy enough.
If you go on the link, which is Speak Your Spark, it says it right there. And here I'll put this. I'll give you this link, and then I'll also give you the link to where you can just see all the upcoming things. We also have, I didn't even tell you about, I mean, there's so many classes coming up, but one of the other things that's coming up is a class for documentary filmmakers. Betsy Chase, who produced and co-wrote What the Bleep, is teaching her class. So talk about being a conscious creator, super fun. So anyway, you can see all the things that are coming up right there. Although I don't think that Vision Stories is on there. I don't think we've opened registration for it yet. You can register for both Speak the Spark and Vision Stories. But if you know you want just Vision Stories, just email us at info@leahlam, and we will get you all taken care of.
Okay.
Okay, good to see you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions among us? You guys have held on to the last minute. I'm so impressed. All right. I know that someone in here asked if there'd be a recording of the class, and yes, just check out for the replay. We'll be going out pretty soon, and you will get that. All right. This is when we can all take ourselves off mute and say a hui ho. Have a good day.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank
Nell.
you.
Thank
You. It was wonderful. Wow. What about the whale story?
What's that? Oh, when am I going to tell it? You know, I'm editing the book right now. I think I'll do an evening of storytelling one of these days soon.
Yes. Oh, wow.
Nice. You'll have to come to Newfoundland to see some whales too. And
yes.
Ooh.
That I like. That I like.
It's the time of the year for it now. Ice is starting to come down.
Oh, yay.
Bye.
Bye. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leah.
Take good care.